Hi everyone, my name is Kyle DeVivo. I'm the Assistant Vice President of Sales for DATTCO. And thank you all for being here today. We're really excited to have Senator Blumenthal with us to talk a little bit about the CERTS Act and what that can do for both the school bus and motor coach side of our entire industry. As a company, we've been in business. We're a third generation family business. I'm part of that third generation. We service over 100,000 students, bringing them to school every day here in Connecticut and in Rhode Island, as well as hundreds of thousands of passengers on our motor coach trips in normal times. Unfortunately, with the coronavirus, we've seen a lot of changes to our business over the past 5.5 months. We've had to make incredibly difficult decisions as a company as we've gone through that time period with our employees and with our staff. And as parts of our service, like school bus, have started to return, we've had to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect those employees and of course, our precious cargo and our school children as our passengers. So a lot of changes to our business have come, incredibly difficult financial times for the entire motor coach industry. So that's why I'm so glad that we have Senator Blumenthal here today to talk about supporting the bus industry and those operators that provide those essential services. So thank you so much, Senator.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Thank you to the DeVivo family. They have been a leader nationally, and this issue really is a national one because bus and motor coach transportation are vital to our economy. They are the lifeblood of our transportation system. They are essential infrastructure. They're the kind of essential service that we all take for granted until we need them. In the most recent storm, they provided a way around some of the obstacles that prevented train transportation. This industry is a forgotten, taken for granted service that needs help. They have responded to the needs of our economy, the healthcare challenges of our state and our nation over these past months. I was first in touch with the leaders of this company going back to the very beginning of the pandemic, when they pleaded their case very effectively, but unfortunately the Congress so far has failed to respond, and it must respond to provide essential relief so that this industry will survive. It is literally about survival. I've talked to other transportation companies. These private bus and motor coach companies are hanging by a thread because of the uncertainties of the economy, the overhead expenses they face, and the need to keep together their workforce. And I want to just emphasize that last point. You can't just put an ad in the paper and hire someone off the street to drive a school bus, which carries your children. They have to be trained, they have to be screened, they have to be skilled and trustworthy at what they do. If you lose that workforce, you lose an essential part of our transportation system. Keeping together that workforce is one of the essential goals of legislation that I have helped to lead along with my colleague in Rhode Island, Jack Reed. It's called the Coronavirus Economic Relief for Transportation Act. It's called CERTS. The CERTS bill was introduced in July. It now has 28 co-sponsors and a number of significant Republicans, at least 8 Republicans. So it's bipartisan. And the reason it's bipartisan is because the bus and motor coach transportation industry is struggling in every state in the country, red or blue, and the employees of these companies are bipartisan, non-political, hardworking, dedicated, skilled people who need to be kept together in these companies so that they can drive the school buses when they return to full-time school, whether it's later this year or next year, whenever it's safe to do so. And they are also essential as a matter of national security. They serve the Coast Guard, vital military installations in times of crisis or storms. These buses are essential transportation. So for economic reasons, national security, as well as simply often the convenience of people who want to hire a bus for a special occasion, whether it's a wedding or a trip to the casino, these buses are a source of pleasure and joy. They are essential to tourism. We know how vital that industry is to the state of Connecticut. So I am very hopeful that the CERTS Act can be part of the next relief package that Congress passes. We are going back to Washington this coming Tuesday. One of my priorities in the next COVID-19 relief package will be the bus and motor coach industry, because we need to provide the grants and loans, forgivable loans, that are essential for the overhead, the insurance, and most importantly, the workforce. Keep it together so that these employees can go back to work full-time.
So, our drivers, especially our school bus drivers, really rely on those school trips and those field trips as part of their income. And obviously for the time being, that's not going to be happening most likely. And we understand that. We're totally on board with an abundance of caution when it comes to protecting these students and making sure that they're safe. But the reality is that, these drivers are used to a 5-day work week, and in some cases a 6 or 7-day work week with charters and school trips and things like that. And, with many districts going to a hybrid model, and not having that extra income for them that they typically can rely on, that's a real challenge if, there's not a 180-day school year and things like that. Again, we understand, but it absolutely creates financial challenges for us in covering our fixed overheads as a company, as well as for our drivers and having reduced income because of that. So, and then for our motor coach drivers, in terms of the charter side of our business, basically a complete stop in terms of revenue. So since March, which is of course challenging for those drivers. And if you want to talk to some of those drivers, we did bring a couple, and we can do that afterwards. So each driver is going to be, or has already received, a personal protective equipment kit. So that's 5 cloth masks. So for our school bus drivers, they have a fresh one that are machine washable that they can use every day of the week. We've put in EPA regulated cleaning supplies, both for regular cleaning after routes and things like that, but also for spot cleaning of spills, messes that might be created on the bus, as well as gloves and protective eyewear that could be worn when drivers are performing cleaning. Of course, with glare and things like that, we don't want anybody wearing non-prescribed eyewear when they're operating the vehicle. And in terms of the modifications specifically you can make to a school bus, we're somewhat restricted in terms of what we can do in terms of shielding or things like that. But in terms of our drivers and the things that they have, we've definitely made sure that they've had an abundance of PPE and that they have access to it. I think it's an ongoing thing. I mean, we don't fully know yet. We of course hope that, we're contracted for 180 school days. So and that's what our expenses are based off of and how we bid contracts. So we certainly hope we get paid for 180 school days, even if we don't operate, which would allow us to pay our employees for 180 days. So that's certainly our hope. The governor was, very much on top of issuing an executive order when this all happened and schools canceled in the spring to make sure that school bus and other contractors were paid and received some continuity of service, because when things do get back to normal, we want to be here. And to the point that the senator made, we want to make sure that these highly specialized employees can stay in this job and they don't have to go do something else, because it takes months to get licensed and cleared to drive a school bus. And so when things do get back to normal, we want to make sure that we're in place and we're ready to answer the call there.
I think the people of Connecticut should be aware that this forgotten industry is literally struggling to stay alive. And if we lose it, and particularly if we lose these workers, we have sacrificed a really essential part of our workforce and our economy that is essential to our national security, as well as just getting our kids to school.
In a typical year, you know, our charter division for our motor coach group would do over $20 million. In a normal year, we've got about 75 charter coaches and some other specialty vehicles for weddings and other things like that we do. I mean, in March through June, our business was functionally zero on the charter side. All of our, you know, our busiest months tend to be March, April, May, and June, with schools going to Washington, D.C. or New York, and that's when many field trips and other things happen. And, you know, we essentially saw that all go away overnight. You know, it happened in the course of 2 days. So something that we just could have never prepared for from any financial perspective. And you see all these companies, you know, we work with tons of other businesses around the U.S. You know, unlike airlines where we have all these hub cities, you know, we rely on other businesses to help service our vehicles when we're on the road and when we're doing this nationwide touring. And so, you know, while we're obviously very concerned about our own business and want to make sure that we're around, it's incredibly important to us that network stays intact, because when we're in New York or Washington, D.C., we rely on other companies to service our vehicles and to, you know, help our passengers have a great trip. And so on top of all the military services, which some of that has come back, you know, military and FEMA relief and some of the things that are essential have started to come back in July and August. But I think we're going to see several more months ahead of us of, you know, no college athletics, which is a big part of our business, no regularly scheduled touring. And of course, we want to be here to provide those services too, on top of standing at the ready to provide disaster relief and military movements. There's something called a school bus proficiency in Connecticut, and like everything, that testing and that certification process stopped in March, which is normally administered by DMV. So on top of the regular challenges that we have of licensing CDL drivers and the CDL driver shortage that existed before COVID, you know, we faced challenges of, you know, getting those people recertified. They require recertification every 4 years. And then for new drivers, again, it speaks to the not being able to put this back together if it falls apart. There's no way to get the number of drivers that we need just here in Connecticut to drive our buses for all the other companies, motor coach and school bus, that exist. If these drivers go and find other jobs, getting thousands of drivers licensed in short order is just not going to be physically possible based on the resources that are available today.
The biggest thing is, you know, the industry as a whole, as the senator said, nationwide is just in distress and disarray. You know, I welcome you guys, if you want some photos, to go down to our motor coach shop, which is the second light, take a right, second light, take a right, and just go right in the yard. You'll see a line of motor coaches parked there that on a day like today would be out, you know, in Washington, D.C., you know, on tours doing fall foliage up in Vermont. You know, we normally have visitors from Europe, from South America, that are riding our coaches and enjoying New England. And you can drive down the street and see just a line of buses parked. And that's not just us, it's all over the country, from here to California. Those buses are parked, the drivers aren't working. And so you'll see, you know, we need some relief in order just to get through it, just to get to the other side when things start to open up again. We want to be able to have us and those companies be able to open and have those drivers get back to work. We understand that right now there's a reason for them to be parked. People, you know, people can't, you know, travel because a lot of things aren't open. But when things reopen, we want the industry to be here and be healthy.
On the subject of what are they looking for? Yeah. $10 billion. The airline industry got a special relief package of $30 billion. Now they're coming for more. The reason why they asked for $30 billion is so that they could continue to pay their pilots and their flight attendants, because those are people with special skills, just like the bus drivers. And Amtrak received its relief package. The bus and motor coach companies have received nothing. That's really outrageous. They've been left out with nothing. And so across the country, they are at a precipice. And there is a bus over here that has, it's on right now, it says, "Buses Move America." Buses move America. Absolutely right. Buses move America, just like airplanes do. If we had no airplanes, if we had no trains, we'd be distraught and disarray. Same is true of buses. And they are coming back, but they still have overhead, insurance, payroll, depreciation. None of it's been covered by any federal relief package, and that's why we need the CERTS Act right away. And that's why it is bipartisan. You know, some of the most conservative members on the Republican side, some of the most progressive members of our Democratic side, it's really a bipartisan measure. And I can remember Mr. DeVivo, we were on the phone back in March. Yeah. And, you know, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, that they were literally at the edge of financial disaster. And they have struggled, they've held things together, they've kept people still employed through their, frankly, their courage, their guts, and determination. But they deserve some relief from the federal government. That's the reason for the CERTS Act. It's on the floor of the United States Senate, ready for a vote. If the Senate comes back next Tuesday and votes on the CERTS Act, we can have relief for the bus and transportation industry. But I'm hopeful that it will be part of a larger package. It should be, because we also need aid for state and local governments. We need PPE, protective gear for our frontline workers. We need hazardous duty pay, as well as unemployment insurance extension. There are a variety of core challenges and needs. This is one of them. And I hope it's part of that kind of package, but it could be done literally next week.
We went from what we thought was going to be a record year for us to the second week in March, everything just stopped. And that's when we started talking to the senator, and we went from completely zero, everything just shut down. And we were shut down pretty much for 3 months. And, you know, things are starting to come back now, but again, it's very slow. To put the size in perspective, the airlines receive $30 billion. They transport about 700 million passengers per year. Our industry received zero, and the motor coach industry, and I'm not counting school buses, transports about 600 million. So we're very close in size to the number of people we transport. It's just there's a huge disparity in the relief that was provided. A lot of places too, you know, where you see the airlines are not providing service anymore or significantly reduced service, you know, we think there's essential transportation to those smaller cities. You know, New Haven, for example, you know, no planes in there into Tweed right now, as far as I know. And you know, so the people that were relying on that, for example, to go to Philadelphia, you know, they should be able to go to Union Station, get on a bus, and go to Philadelphia. And that's the story around the country, where the airlines have pulled back in some of these smaller areas and reduced service in the big areas, that you really need the motor coach to fill in those gaps.